Pokémon is a Japanese media franchise and was created by Satoshi Tajiri in 1996. In its 27-year-old lifespan, Pokémon has become the highest grossing media franchise of all time. From mainline games to the trading card game, anime, movies, and manga, along with the plethora of merchandise and toys, Pokémon is a staple in most kids' childhoods, including my own. The franchise began as Pocket Monsters Red and Green, later released outside of Japan as Pokémon Red and Blue, a pair of video games for the original Game Boy handheld system that were developed by Game Freak. The Pokémon video game series is the third best-selling video game franchise of all time, with more than 440 million copies sold as of 2022. There are currently 22 core series games released in Japanese, 21 in European languages. In late 2022, the latest generation of Pokémon games was released, Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet, and it was a disaster. From performance issues, horrible graphics, and loose identity, the games are obviously rushed. So sit back, grab a noodle and egg sandwich, and let's talk about Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Now let's start off with the positives, the character designs. The gym leaders look really cool, but for me, the highlight of character design in this game is Team Starfall. The first member that you should fight, of course it's up to you in what order you go into, is Giacomo. Am I saying that right? Giacomo? Yeah, something like that. He makes music, and you can tell because he's always holding his laptop and he has at least one headphone on. In the lore, or whatever, he created the Starfall theme, which is pretty interesting because that means that each character adds something to their idea. It's not just something that us as the player hears this. This is at least canon. Next up is Mela. She's the fire type leader, and she has a kind of snarky attitude, but all in all, she's pretty nice. She has a large choker, belt, and massive boots that she can't even walk in. Atticus is the next one. He's supposed to be the poison type ninja, but the only odd thing is that it doesn't really seem to match his character. He talks like he's in D&D club, but he has this whole ninja theme. Maybe I'm just looking too far into it. It's also explained in the lore that Atticus designed all of the Team Starfall outfits. His whole area is also super cool, as it's called Tag Tree Thicket. It's covered in graffiti, and there's bright colors everywhere, kind of like poisonous frogs. Ortega is the fairy-type Starfall leader. He's dressed quite dapper, which goes with his story because apparently he's a transfer student from Kalos. Kalos in the Pokemon universe is basically France. His parents are clothes designers, and you can see this in his, design. And finally, we have Aerie. She has this white rock star-esque outfit as well as this striking face paint. She's the fighting type Starfall leader, and by far she is the most difficult battle that I had to deal with in the game, which made it more fun. Her team is really interesting, and it goes with her whole theme of, being a fighter. The area that she's in is also a bamboo sort of meditation area where a lot of fighting type Pokemon spawn, so it goes with the whole idea of, a fighting theme. I forgot to mention this before, but Ortega's area is also kind of with his fairy theme. It's this nice prairie, flower-field grassland, which is right at the end of this icy, snowy mountain. It's really pretty, and there's flower petals everywhere. It really goes with the theme. The other characters in this game that also have great character design are the gym leaders. Speaking of gym leaders, this leads us into the negatives. Yeah, this game has a lot of them, so get comfy. Though the gym leaders look cool, they are the highlight of all the gyms, not even the battles, the gyms themselves, or anything else surrounding the gym. Every gym has this, puzzle, I guess you could say, but it's not even difficult. It just feels like a baby trying to put all the shapes into the square-shaped hole. It's so easy. The very first one that you should go to is the bug-type area, in which you have this massive inflated olive and you bring it to the basket. And you can fight somebody there, but you don't even have to. There's no point. Now, Pokemon has set great expectations for gyms. Look no further than previous games. These gyms have really unique puzzles that are pretty difficult to figure out, as well as necessary trainer battles for the most part, unless you figure out a way to avoid them. These trainer battles really help see if you were prepared to even fight this gym, and all of these characters had Pokemon of the same typing. It made the whole gym less of a final battle and more of an entire experience. It was really fun, and this game doesn't have that. It has a pretty simple, dumb mini game, and then you fight the gym leader. In the gyms, there's nothing to do there. The gyms look awful. They're the exact same copy and paste building and the exact same copy and paste room that you enter, which is just a secretary, you talk to them, and you have a battle. Sure, there's the battlefield in every single area, but most of them are kind of okay. The only one that I found that was interesting and that I thought was memorable was the one in Levincia with Ayano. Of course, she's the best gym leader, but it's like its own stage. You have this whole audience around you. The other one with Rhyme is also, compelling and interesting, but it's just a stage. With the problem with these gyms not even being that compelling, the towns there that are meant to harbor them have barely anything happening. The only one that has something different is Medali, which has the Treasure Eatery, which is basically just the gym and the battlefield. It is by far the most unique out of all of them, as it has its own unique food items that you can get to get different buffs. We'll talk about that later. All in all, this gym is the coolest, which is sad because it's an exception, and there's 7 other gyms? Oh god. In all these towns and cities, there's basically no NPCs you can interact with, and in previous Pokemon games, you could basically go into every single building. Now every building is just there to look cool. It makes Levincia look so empty. It's this massive city with huge towers, and you can go into none of them. The only thing that's good there is there's a store and food, which you can get in other towns, so it doesn't even matter. Now, a huge part of this game's identity is the school. It's this massive building that you could see in all the trailers. It looks really cool, and you can actually take classes here. But they don't matter, because they look bad. Why am I sitting in here just going through dialogue? Sure, the teachers' character designs are cool, like I said in the positives, but you can't just use that to say it's good. Sure, there's the nurse. She's kind of stupid and she couldn't become an actual teacher, so she just became the nurse. And as you start to progress in the story, she gets more and more inspired by you. In fact, to the point where she starts going to the library, learning more about teaching and in order to pass her test. And that's cool. I really like that. But that's the exception. The rest of the characters don't even really matter. It is cool to see that certain gym leaders and members of the Elite Four are teachers. It kind of puts everybody together. But at the same time, I don't interact with the people at the school. I don't care. It's a completely optional thing. So sure, maybe the school and all the towns and the gyms are quite soulless, but they have to look good, right? I mean, it is a game released in 2022. Wrong! You would be oh so wrong. Alright, it's time to address the Dawn fan in the room. Graphics and performance, both kind of together. The graphics are so visually jarring. It gives me a headache looking at this game for too long. It looks just plainly bad. And if you're comparing it to even previous Pokemon games, it is extraordinarily sad. Even the previous generation, Generation 8, which had Pokemon Sword and Shield, also for the Nintendo Switch, looked pretty cool. I would say they probably have the best graphics in any Pokemon game, in my personal opinion. Comparing that to Scarlet and Violet, which was made, 4 years later? Even comparing Scarlet and Violet's graphics to a game that was released the exact same year, Pokemon's Legends Arceus. It was released in January of 2022, and looks really nice. It was Pokemon's first attempt of this open world-ish type of design for core Pokemon games, And they did a good job. Rocks look really nice, the grass is nice and well textured, and the shading is cool, the Pokemon look cool, all of that's great. Alright, now let's look at Scarlet and Violet. The frame rate is also abysmal. Legends Arceus could easily hit around 30 frames per second, while Scarlet and Violet is barely hitting it. It is trucking along. It's at least around an average of 20 frames per second. Certain characters and animations that are farther away will run at different FPS. For example, this character will be walking at about 2 frames per second if they're too far away. Comparing it to Legends Arceus, this character is moving just fine and looks like a normal thing in the world. It really takes away from the immersion of Scarlet and Violet. Characters and Pokemon also just pop in out of nowhere, making it hard to just go anywhere. You either run into NPCs that you didn't see just a second ago, or you accidentally initiate a battle with a Pokemon that just spawned in right in front of you. And for some reason, Pokemon can just see you while you're in a battle, so they'll stand on top of you and wait for you to finish your battle just to be instantly put into another one. There's also no voice acting, which is extraordinarily obvious in battles like Rhyme, like I mentioned before. It's a rap battle. You have to read all the lyrics and all the text. It's really just weird. There's also really emotional scenes in which you just read the text. The character's voice isn't there. And I feel like it would work a lot better, especially with our rival character. I bet her voice would add a lot of charm to her. Now you may be confused, why are there so many problems with this game? Well, first and foremost, it seems to be that everything was rushed. Since Legends Arceus came out in the same year, part of the dev team had to have been working on that game. Scarlet and Violet was said to start being developed in 2019, so in between that time, we've had the Sinnoh remakes, we've had Legends Arceus, and I'm sure Game Freak has other projects they're working on right now. On top of that, they have to release Scarlet and Violet for the OLED Switch, and for the holiday season, so there is a hard date in which they have to release this. Which I think led to why there's so many problems in this, is that there wasn't enough love and care put into this game, in which the game would be so much better. Now, to conclude, there are a lot of changes to the quota that this whole generation has created. For example, this is the very first fully open-world Pokemon game, and it seems a direction that they want to take for future games, and I'm totally open to it. I think it's really cool, and it could be really immersive. This was the first Pokemon game that I've actually played all the way through. I love this game. I had a lot of fun playing it. It's just, I feel disappointed in what the Pokemon Company has created. Like I said, it's the highest grossing media franchise, and this is what they're creating. Pokemon fans old and new still really like this game. Some people have said this is their favorite Pokemon game just because of how fun it is, and I have to agree. This game is still really fun, even with all the issues. I mean, take Skyrim. That game has a lot of little issues, but it is still probably one of the best games made of all time. Now, the Pokemon Company, Nintendo, and Game Freak are not complaining about the poor quality of this game, because it still sold 4 million copies since its release in November, and each game costs around $60. That's $240 million in games alone, not accounting for the new wave of merchandise that came with it.
Don't turn me into marketable plushies.
I even have a plushie from this game. A new Scarlet and Violet limited edition OLED Switch was also released, which, by the way, doesn't include a copy of the game. Thanks, Nintendo. There's so many smaller points that I didn't even talk about in this video that are issues that Game Freak has had with previous games. It's obvious that pushing out another Pokemon game was the goal here, and having an actual functioning, well-playing, and great-looking game was just put on the back burner. Thank you for watching, even if you don't really understand what any of this means.